Welcome to The Real Build. This is Jamela, your host, and The Real Build is all about peeling back the curtains of the construction and development industry and giving a view into all that stuff you wish you learned at school. I want to welcome my co-host, guest star. He's been here with us the last couple of days, Andrei Burlacu with Great A&A Properties. Thanks for coming back again.
Yeah, no worries. Hello.
Fantastic. We're going to keep him as a regular just because his voice is so wonderful to listen to on the radio.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we've been talking about our topic to discuss today because, I mean, there's just so much you can talk about with construction and development, and there's so many different things that can happen in every single circumstance. So let's put that out as a big disclaimer. Like, there's just a lot of scenarios that can happen in any circumstance of development and construction. And we want to start just really diving into how this all works and what goes on behind the scenes and why you want to engage some of these professionals and what you want to look for when engaging these professionals to do projects.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about the development portion of building homes.
Okay.
And I think this is kind of like a piece that people, it's a real wonder.
Yeah, when you hear the word developer, it's usually something to do with tech. So.
And there was not the development course in school, high school. You couldn't take the development course and understand, what that job was. So we're going to break it down today. And first we're going to talk about the developer and the development versus the builder and the contractor, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference there.
There's two different roles there. And some people do both. Mm-hmm. And some people stick to their side.
Yeah.
So let's talk, when do you need a developer? When does that happen?
Yeah, so typically, again, the lines are gray and many people can do different jobs, but typically a developer will take a raw piece of land or a piece of land that's underutilized. Maybe it's an acre large piece that has only one house. Mm-hmm. And they come up with a plan and a vision for that property, and they use the appropriate consultants, and they kind of map out a path towards success. So they'll look at the land and kind of look at how they want to subdivide it, how they want to cut it, what they want to build there. And they take the land all the way to the point where there's services at the lot line. And that's typically when it gets transferred over to a builder who actually builds the end product. If it's a condo building, if it's townhomes, if it's a single family house, that's usually when the builder steps in.
And a great example of this is if you've ever driven through a new subdivision where there's new construction going on, like in McKinley or Wilden, and you're driving down these streets and there's empty lots and there's houses complete.
That's a perfect example.
And there's houses under construction. Everything before the houses the developer did. So raw piece of land, saw a vision.
Yep.
Where are the streets going to go?
Yep.
Where is the park going to be? Mm-hmm. Where are the hiking trails going to go? And how are the houses going to get laid out? And on really massive scales, they have to consider, where is the school going to be? Where's the land I'm going to dedicate to the school district to put a school in for this community?
Right.
And where is the grocery store eventually going to go when the density gets up? And we're seeing that in the Upper Mission with the new wonderful grocery store and retail space that's going in up there. I'm sure a lot of people are very relieved.
Yeah, no more hour-long drive for a glass of milk.
Yeah. So believe it or not, and the Upper Mission is a great place to show as an example, but the plan for schools and grocery has been in place to be up there from the beginning of them starting to put houses up there. You just have to reach a certain density of homes before it makes sense for those grocers to come in and supply their services.
Yeah. And even more nitty gritty, the developer is usually the one that plans out all of your services. So your electricity, your sewer, your storm, all of that stuff usually gets done before a builder comes on site and actually starts building homes or condos or grocery stores or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like power in, water in, poop out.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that's there for you guys, set up, and like continues to travel through the city to the right spots.
Yep.
So that is really what the planning and development of a developer's role is before the builder gets there.
Yeah.
Now, let's also talk like small scale.
Sure.
So, and I want to talk about this today because there has been rezoning by the province, and they have been going after densifying existing properties. And so all single-family homes, most single-family homes across the province has been rezoned in order to develop into a fourplex, and in some cases, even 6 units. And so essentially, that has made every single-family homeowner the option to be a developer.
Yeah.
And develop their property.
In essence, if they want to go down that road, it does take some sort of financial investment just to make sure that it's actually worth doing what you're planning to do. But yeah, these small lots now can have developable ability on them.
Yeah. And so if you do have a property and you're wondering, like, where do I start? Like, how do I figure this out? We're going to talk about a few of those things as we go through the show to help you kind of start on your own. But engaging a consultant of a developer will get you through weeks of conversations with different people and get you kind of down to the point, right?
Exactly.
Because the developer is going to understand how to look up your current zone, hear what your goals are, and understand the feasibility of doing that either within the current zone or a zone it has the ability to be rezoned to.
Yeah, and we'll talk about OCP and you know the plans that cities have for different areas and different properties.
Yep. Other things that could happen is like subdividing the property. So they'll make sure that that you can read through the current zone bylaws. It'll tell you to subdivide, what the lot width, depth, and area needs to be in order for that to happen. And there's actually tools online on your city website that you can utilize to kind of play around and get a general idea of this as well. But a developer has spent their career reading through these bylaws, talking to city planners, engaging with civil contractors, and kind of just understanding based on what services are already existing, what you're going to need to accomplish whatever you're adding to the property.
Yeah.
And how that gets done right at the end. Even stratification is something you have to think of right off the top.
Oh, yeah. Even something as simple as stratification takes quite a bit of planning because there's going to be more services that are needed for that property.
Yeah. And it's essentially like, this is going to be a weird description of it, but and maybe it's because I'm a girl. But your developer and even your builder, I describe them, they're essentially like the wedding planner of that project, right? Like, as a wedding planner, I can't cook your meal, but I know the top 3 caterers we need to go meet with. And I can't, I probably am not going to do all your floral bouquets, but I know the top 3 florists that do weddings that can get your vision through that you look at, right? So if you transfer that concept over to development, this person has a plethora of experts that they converse with regularly and keep up to speed on what's going on. And that's why they're really valuable if you're looking to develop your property.
Yeah, the industry connections are going to be one part of it that is kind of going to make the process of developing your land either easy or difficult, just depending on who you know and what kind of information that they're able to give to you up front.
Yeah. And it's not a cookie cutter thing.
No,
right?
It's never going to be a cookie cutter thing.
One person can look at it and be like, yeah, this makes sense. Another person can look and be like, yeah, but you could do this, this, and this, like it's so understanding what you want, your needs to get out of it is really important. Now, we're going to keep talking about this topic. Coming up next, we're going to dive into the city tools, the online city tools that we mentioned that are there for you to go on and dabble around and kind of see what you can do with your property. But anyway, stay tuned. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Welcome back to The Real Build. I'm your host, Jamela. I'm here with we'll call him a co-star, Andrei Burlacu with Great A Properties. Thanks for coming out.
Hello, thank you.
We are talking about land development today. The mysterious land developer. No class in high school to take to understand what this is. And now more than ever is this person becoming essential in consulting with everyday people because you get to redevelop your land into 4 units now. Yeah.
The expertise is going to be needed across many cities across BC.
Yeah, for efficiencies and not going in a rabbit hole because you can get a lot of different answers sometimes.
You can get stuck so easily.
Yeah. So let's talk about, how we start. And
sure.
People love to do their own research these days. The internet is a wonderful place where there's a lot of information, especially in this area. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to talk about that, like how you can do some research on your own and get a little bit of understanding. And one of the best places to go is your city municipal website.
Yes.
Yeah. On this website, they have a mapping system.
Yes, GIS mapping system.
And it is our best friend.
Typically, yeah. Yeah, whenever you come across a property or you have an idea or you see a piece of land for sale, that's typically where I go. I know that's typically where you go too. And on that mapping software, you can see things like, past assessment reports. It can go as simple as that. It can go as complex as current zoning, future zoning, what the city wants to see in that area over the next 10, 20, 30 years. That'll be called kind of your OCP or your official community plan that the city usually puts out every couple of years. So all of that information can be found as well as sewer connections, where your closest power is, where your water goes to. So all of this information can be placed on basically an overlay of Google Maps, and you can go from there. Yeah.
Now, if you just go to your municipal website, you could spend a long time trying to figure out where this thing is because those websites are deep. There's so much stuff on there. Like even I have a hard time finding bylaws sometimes. Yeah. So I have made it a habit. I just go to my Google search bar and I put in City of West Kelowna maps. And up comes the link to directly to the page, typically, where it has the launch button, because of course they got to keep asking you more questions like, do you want to launch the map? So you click the launch button. Up comes this map. It's pretty straightforward from there. It's not too intricate.
There's different layers that you can click on and off, and you can see the changes that occur.
Yeah. The first thing you want to do is put your address. There's always a search bar at the top. Yep. You want to put your address in the search bar, hit search. On the side will come up, typically on the side will come up your address, and you might find out there's a few other addresses that are similar too. You click on your address, the map is zoom, it's going to take you straight to your property. And somewhere within there's typically something called layers. And if you find, and it's on kind of on the right-hand side where you just clicked on that address, you click on layers, and it's going to give you a ton of boxes you can check to find the information out about this property. And typically what I look for is lot lines.
Lot dimensions. Yeah. Those are great to have.
Now, big disclaimer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the city loves this.
The lot dimensions on the city website are estimates, guys.
Pretty good estimates, but they are still estimates.
Pretty good estimates.
You can't hold anybody to them.
No. So when you're using this for your preliminary research on what you can do, there's a measuring tool on this website too. You can actually measure it on your own, but you can probably guess you're going to be in and out by a couple of feet, right? And when you look at the bylaws, like you have a certain side yard setback, front yard setback, we're building in every inch that you can get. And so this first round, where you're not spending any money, you're just doing some preliminary research. Keep in mind that these are estimates. Not until you get a full legal survey, which does cost you some money. You don't want to invest money yet. And maybe you have one in the old records of purchasing your home. I've seen that before. But
sometimes even those city sites, like we found out, City of West Kelowna, they'll actually pull up a survey map, even if it was done back in the 1970s. I guess somebody went through the painstaking process of scanning all of those old surveys. And so those will give you pretty good estimates, but things change, and it's always good to err on the side of caution when using the city sites. Yeah,
especially for measurements when you're getting your original ideas, right? So I'm on the city site. I've got my land pulled up here. Down the side, it'll also show you your zone, your current zone.
And it'll have a link to your zoning bylaw too. So you can kind of take that hyperlink and it'll take you to your zoning bylaw where you can see the exact dimensions that you would need in order to achieve developments that you're thinking of.
Yeah. Or you go back to the search bar, because some municipalities don't have that. You can go back to your search bar, put your municipality and your zone in, and then your bylaw list will come up and you can scan through and find your zone. Yeah. Now, this might appear to be a really intimidating document because it's a technical written document. But it honestly is just really simplified. There's not a lot of fluff in there. No one's telling you a story. It's just very simplified writing. So you'll come to your zone.
That's the most important part, is don't get lost in like all the other zones that you see on there.
Yes.
Try to pinpoint your specific zone. So Kelowna, mostly if you have a single family house within the city boundaries, you're going to be RU1. Mm-hmm. You can go right to the RU1 zoning and you can see exactly what you can build, how big you need your lot to be to build those things, how big you need to subdivide, so on and so forth.
Height of building.
Yeah, height.
Finished floor area ratio that you're allowed to have, your setbacks that you're allowed to have. So these are all really important numbers that we know how to kind of calculate in that. But most importantly, it tells you how many parking stalls you need to have, which is where we always start, right?
Yeah.
You got to get those parking stalls in, and then from parking stalls you can get onto the property, you can figure out kind of what you can build on there.
Yeah, that's always a good step.
Yeah.
As sad as it is to hear, usually developments do start with parking.
Yeah. So now we've given you enough tools to be dangerous here. Yep. You can go onto the website. You can see your lot lines, understand your size, understand your zone, read your bylaw. You could be able to figure out if you could subdivide it from the bylaw information. It'll tell you your frontage you need. It will tell you your lot size you need and your area of lot. So that's a really kind of easy thing to figure out on the website.
Another important one too is going to be your OCP designation.
Yeah.
So on those maps you can overlay kind of the OCP and what the city will want to see in the future for those areas. And so you might find that, okay, my property is zoned as single family residential right now, but the city actually wants to see some sort of townhouse density in the future.
Yeah.
And those OCP documents, they're very in depth. They're usually hundreds of pages long, but they can go through like street widths and what kind of sidewalk they want and what kind of trees they want. Like there's a plethora of information that you can find on there, but that's always an interesting thing to see is like, okay, is my property going to be like this for the next 5 to 10 years, or does the city want to see a change here? Because then it's easier to rezone your property if that's the case.
Yeah, and the OCP stands for the Official Community Plan.
Yep.
Get to know your official community plan. Like even outside of real estate development, it shows like what business they want to see happen in the city. Like it's your tool to work alongside your city.
Yeah, you can see if new schools are coming into your area or new shops. Like if they're going to allow commercial, then you know, hey, there might be a hairdresser down my street in a few years.
Yeah, and that plan, that tells you kind of what you could upzone your property to. So people ask like, okay, I know my zone, I know what I can do, but what can I turn it into? That is where this OCP document comes into play, because the city has said, this is what we want in these areas. So if you're reading it and it's saying, they want to see mid-size multifamily, then there's probably some zones they're going to allow you to upzone it to. And that's where you have city support.
Yes.
Right? And that is where you have a bit more certainty that you would be able to rezone it.
Yeah, usually you're going to have the city on your side if you're going to do something that they want to see anyways.
Yeah, if you're trying to play outside of the official community plan, it's possible. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And it would only be because it makes absolute sense with the current OCP. But this is key. Like, understand your community plan, and then you know where you can go.
Yeah, and you can see kind of where the city's going to go too.
Yeah, exactly, which is super cool. So just to sum it up, go to your mapping system, your municipality followed by maps, put your address, launch the calendar, put your address in the top corner, and play around with your property and see like what it is and maybe what you can do with it. So coming up next, we're going to keep talking about land development, but we're going to dive into the steps of land development. So, there's certain stuff you can do off the top to understand what you could do, and then you got to start investing money. So let's talk about those steps next. Welcome back to The Real Build. This is Jamela, your host, and I have my dear friend Andrei Burlacu with Great A&A Properties back here again.
Hello.
His voice is just too great for radio. He hates it when I say that. You should see the redness in his face right now. Anyway, we are diving into land development today. I hope everyone's still awake and listening. Call in and tell us if these topics are good or not. We'd love to hear your feedback. But we're just going to keep going with this. So we started off talking about, the difference between a developer and a builder and what the developer does. And they essentially are creating the new lot with the services, water in, power in, poop out, ready to go at the lot line for the builder to come in and then build the home. And then we talked about some tips and tricks you could use to look up your property, to understand, what you could do with it. So understanding the size of the property, the current zone of the property, and even taking it to the next level, understanding your official community plan of that area, meaning what the property could be rezoned to, right?
That's right.
So now what we're going to talk about is the process of this, right? So everyone would love to just be told, this is what you can do, this is what it's going to look like, and this is how much it's going to cost, right off the top. If I could answer that question for people, I'd be on a beach somewhere. I would be a multimillionaire. I'd be on a beach somewhere and kicking back, selling my skill on the internet, probably.
Yeah, it doesn't. Unfortunately, you actually have to be there to figure out the answers to those questions.
Well, and it takes some meetings with different professionals. It takes creating a plan that you then send back around to these different professionals to understand what you can do and how it gets done, right? And so it's a chicken or the egg. So the best thing we can do for you as consulting you on your property is we can start by giving you the best knowledge from the information we have access to and what your goals are.
Yeah, huge.
And if we're like, yeah, okay, your goal makes sense. Your property is this size. We can probably get generally this much square footage, 1,200 extra square feet here. And the rough cost per square foot build number is this. Every builder is cringing that I just said that out there too, by the way, because that is also a very loaded question and loaded number. It's a whole nother show we can talk about. But for the purposes of preliminary of what you can do and a ballpark of what it could cost, That's essentially what happens in a first consultation,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So nailing down like what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it is really going to be the roadmap to especially small lot development.
Yeah.
Do you want to create some more rental income? Do you want a suite for your mother-in-law that comes from time to time? Whatever that may be.
You want to downsize?
You want to downsize.
Something brand new on your own property?
Exactly. So figuring out that why is going to be the kind of driving factor between what you're going to build.
Yeah. And then of course it's like, well, could I afford it, right? So you get this initial estimate based on the tools we've talked about today, using the city map system to determine your lot size, which comes with a disclaimer because it's not a true survey, right? And then understanding the zone and the setbacks. And, if you're keeping a current building on the property, there's other things that you have to measure and understand about that. But just a general concept that you could then sit with your bank.
Yep.
You could sit with your mortgage broker. You could talk through this. They would understand your finances, and they might say, okay, under this concept, it makes sense. This is what we'll need from you to confirm that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So to start things off, I mean, kind of some rule of thumbs, I guess you could call them, or things that you'd want to look for when you're kind of going through the mapping system and looking at your property, figuring out what you want to do. Like you said earlier, like your lot size is going to be critical.
Yes.
And that's going to really determine what you can build, because if you have a small lot, you're obviously not going to try to put 4 units on something that can't really support it, because you have height requirements or height maximums. So your lot lines and how much frontage you have is really going to determine what you can build. And aside from that, your site coverage. So that's going to be how much
hard surface
space that you can live in, and driveways from time to time, how much of that you can cover your whole lot with. So let's say it's 70%. That means that you can cover 70% of your lot with stuff.
Yeah.
If it's 50%, you can only cover 50%. And those typically are pretty strict rules. You can get around them, especially if a municipality hasn't updated their coverage laws in a while. You can get around them, but typically you want to stay within those set guidelines.
Yeah. And so consulting with a development consultant, and they would probably have a drafting person that they work with. They would be able to do this analysis for you and understand kind of preliminary what you could do. By no means is this like locked in stone, but these professionals can be like, no, not possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you can get pretty quick answers.
Yeah.
Just, these rules of thumb that I've said is kind of what we use all the time to look at properties and see if the juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah. And then if they're like, okay, this seems to be possible, this is like the real big picture estimate, and your banker or mortgage broker is going, if you're kind of within this area, it makes sense. You don't want to be strapped at that number, because that number still has like space to change because you don't have all the information yet. But if then it's kind of like that's where you now have to invest money to get a better picture of what you're doing, so you can better understand the cost of what you're doing, right?
Should we talk about some of those investment?
Yeah.
Okay.
So first step, survey.
Yes.
Land survey.
Yeah, so that'll give you your actual lot dimensions. And from there you can create an actual plan.
And the other thing is the geodetic survey will give you the grade changes of your property, which some people may or may not think of. And even a slight grade. So say you have this house on this property and, you might have an old retaining wall at the back you don't even remember is there. And there's this slight grade across the property and you want to put a fourplex. Now imagine that driveway going downward and then trying to turn and get into your garage without bottoming out that vehicle. These are all things that have to be considered right off the top in how they put this property together. So the first roadmap of this is the land survey. Yep. And now if you're dealing with a small lot development, so we're talking the single family home thing, right? You can, once you have that, you engage the drafting person and create the plans. And you're going to have some application fees with the city for your development permit. But if you can get those two things done off the top, then you're going to have a clear image of what you want to do that you can discuss with the city and show. You're going to have plans that you can have a builder cost out for you so you can understand your construction costs. Yes. And you can take a budget and the plans to the bank and understand if the bank's going to lend you the money. And also the city can see what you're putting there and they'll be able to give you a concept of what your servicing upgrades you're going to need to do. Yeah, so your sewer, water, power, poop. what that's gonna look like. Water, power, poop. Water, power, poop. Yeah, so what you're going to need there, and then your contractor that you're working with can kind of take that information and put an estimate together of what that would look like, or the city might provide you an estimate because they might be the ones that do the work. It's all different in all different municipalities. But so if you can invest that money to get to there, then you'll get a really good picture of what you're going to do. And another kind of the next investment you would want to make towards this plan, most banks, before they kind of finalize anything, they're going to want to see a geotechnical survey. Yeah. So that's going to, tell you what's under the ground and what kind of site work, groundwork you're going to have to do in order to be able to build what you're planning. Yeah, I'd say that comes with the next step. If you're unsure of, if your land has been farmed. Mm-hmm. That's a huge one, yeah. Because you've got organics on top. Earthwork is a tricky piece that your contractor can definitely talk to you with. But you'd kind of want to get into that next step with that geotech report, just to get a really good understanding of what you're going to do. So, we've covered, in a small lot, redevelopment. So your single family home, how can I figure out what I can do? You go to the mapping system, consulting your developers, getting a concept together, talking with the bank, understanding your finances. Then that just first level investment, which I'd say is probably somewhere between, $25,000 to $40,000, depending on if you're doing a fourplex or carriage home. And then you'll have a really good picture of what you're going to do. Yeah. Okay, coming up next, Gravinder's giving me the wrap it up. Coming up next, we're going to talk about large lot subdivisions, building roads, building parks, what that all looks like. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Real Build. This is Jamela, your host. I have got my, I'm calling him all different things today. Co-star, colleague, Andrei Burlacu, with Great NA Properties, voice of the hour. Hello. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you for being with us. Now, we have been talking about the developer. Who's the developer? What do they do? What's the development process? How can I figure out what I can do with my land? Things I might want to consider to do to my land, and the process you go through to when you start spending a little bit more money to get a bit more guaranteed idea of what you're going to do. Yes. Yeah. So that is all really catered towards this new single family home rezoning, actually, right? Yeah. Everything we talked about is really basic entry level to go ahead and start the process of redeveloping your property. Now, the other thing people run into with their properties is realtors knocking on the door, land assembly.
Yeah, it's happening a lot, especially in Kelowna right now.
Your neighbor's in, are you in? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And also there is, people are retiring and they're downsizing, and there's still people that have large chunks of land, 1 acre, 2 acres, sitting on the outskirts of the city, some kind of within. Development has happened around them already, and they're going, okay, what do I sell it? What can I do with this thing? What can I sell it for? So one thing that's really consistent is real estate is, if you're not an investor or in the industry, it's a very emotional purchase and sale.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And things that people run into, I'm sure if we had a realtor here, he would say that this happens in every single conversation, but the value of your home, I'm going to just say this, everyone's going to hate me, don't throw the eggs. Susie's size chart on your door frame has no value to anybody but you. It actually is a hindrance because I'm going to have to pay a painter to paint this thing. So that was kind of harsh. But the reality is that when you've lived in your home your whole life and you've taken care of it and you've mowed the lawn and you've done all the things, there's value there. You want it to be worth something. But the reality is that there are mechanisms that decide what your value of your property is.
Right. Yeah.
One is basic, the appraisal. Mm-hmm. And in some markets, it can sell a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but the appraisal pretty much. Yeah,
that's your kind of, that trumps all.
Trumps all, yeah.
Yeah, your appraisal, your as-is appraisal is what it is.
And essentially, the reason why it trumps all is because it tells the bank what it's going to lend to your buyer that's coming along.
Exactly.
Right? And they won't lend outside of that. So the buyer would have to come up with their own cash if they want more. And that's not a likely situation. So understanding your appraisal, other sales of similar properties in the marketplace, that also is a way to determine. But then a lot of people get excited. Like, I'm going into this land assembly. The realtor says we can sell our properties together to some developer that's going to build a condo. Like, let's hold out. We can be millionaires now. Mm-hmm. And this all plays into what we've been talking about today, is understanding your current zone and what it can be zoned to.
Right.
And unless you go through that process, invest the money, and do the rezoning, which takes time. I'm sorry, honey, your property's only worth what it is.
Yeah, so there's a few different options for valuing a property. You mentioned some of them. Comparable sales is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
And your as-is appraisal is a very, very good thing to lean on. And so your as-is appraisal will look at comparable sales, and it'll look at your current zoning. So even if your property can get zoned to a condo building, but you only have a single family house, yes, there's potential in that, but there's still a lot of work that has to go into getting that zoning, upzoning that property.
Yeah, which we've been talking about today. Hiring a land surveyor, getting the geotech involved.
There's fees involved with the city. There's, conversations that need to happen. There's building improvements and road improvement that need to happen, sidewalks that need to go in. So there's a whole bunch of these different things and costs and time that has to go in to actually change your property zoning from what it is to what it could be in the future. And so that's why typically you're not going to get for your land, you're not going to get, that crazy price that you might be thinking, is because a lot of work has to go into it.
Yeah. And so I'm in this land assembly with my neighbors. It's up for sale. Here comes the developer, your developer that would analyze this project. Not emotional.
Sure.
Houses are coming down.
No.
Location.
Yeah.
What my product's going to sell for.
Yeah.
How many pieces of that inventory can I put on the land? And divide that by what you would pay per unit for land.
Yeah.
And that's the price.
Pretty simple formula, exactly. So it's I mean, from my side of things, right, I would get an appraisal as well to say, okay, these units, these townhome units, these condo units, whatever I'm doing, I get an appraisal saying, what will these be worth when they're complete?
Yeah.
And the appraisal is going to give me a number for that. Now, from there, I subtract all of my build costs, all of the servicing costs, all of the city fees that come into it, all of those expenses, and you're left with what's known as a land residual. And so that land residual is basically the maximum amount that you would be willing to pay for the property in order to make that deal work as the developer.
Yeah. And so we've all heard of that guy that wanted to hold out for more money.
And then they built a condo building right beside his house.
Yes, there's one in downtown Vancouver, and I end up driving by it all the time. It's just this little house. It's totally straight out of the movie Up, right? I
think so, yeah.
Yeah, and that happens because it really is a mathematical equation. It's business. It either works or it doesn't work. So if you're in a land assembly, that's some advice. Keep that in mind, because if you want to get out with the sale and it makes sense for you, then that's what's being thought of. Now, before we end, I just want to quickly touch on large land parcels. So you've got a bigger chunk of land within the city. You've now learned how to go onto the website. You figured out what it can be. You've read through the OCP. You know what it could be. This is actually where you might want to invest and do the work to upzone it into something the city would allow you to.
Absolutely.
This is a complete real estate investment strategy, is buying up these lands, upzoning it, and then flipping it off to a developer. So you keep that in mind. It might add some value. And it's an easy equation to figure out because there'll be a current cost per unit developers would pay for the land in this zone, and this zone.
Yep.
And you could see if it would be worth investing the money to upzone the thing.
That's right.
Okay. Well, if you're still awake out there, that is development. That is the tip of the iceberg of developing properties. Maybe one of these days we'll do a show about our experiences, our stories of developing.
That would be fun.
It'd be painful probably for us, fun for everybody else. But thank you for tuning in this week. You can find us every Tuesday at 2. This is The Real Build with Jamela, your host. We'll see you next Tuesday.